Today is Monday, December 8th. What to know about a case before the U.S. Supreme Court today that tests President Trump's power over the government. Also, America's new national security strategy that's being welcomed in Russia and condemned in Europe. Plus, a decades-long vaccine recommendation has changed. A major merger involving Netflix could reshape Hollywood. And the matchups are set for next week's college football playoff and next year's World Cup. Those stories and even more news to know coming up. Welcome to The Newsworthy. All the day's news in around 10 minutes. Fast, fair, fun, and on the go. I'm Erica Mandy. Thanks so much for being here. You ready? Let's do this. It's being called the ultimate fight over who decides the rules in American government. It started when a former FTC commissioner sued, saying she was fired without cause. Now, the case that's being argued in front of the U.S. Supreme Court today is much bigger than that. Justices are reconsidering a landmark decision from 1935 that specifically said the president cannot fire members of independent regulatory agencies just for political reasons. The Trump administration says that precedent should be thrown out, that presidents need the power to dismiss unelected experts for any reason or no reason at all, saying it's the only way to cut the red tape and make sure regulators stay accountable to voters. It might go beyond hiring and firing, too. Analysts say a decision in favor of the Trump administration could weaken the power of Congress, which created more than 24 independent agencies that are supposed to be free from political pressure. They regulate many aspects of American life, from nuclear waste to consumer products. And so it would be possible a lot of that ends up going through the White House, as well as personnel decisions. The Supreme Court is expected to hand down a decision by July. President Trump's America First policy is on display in this year's National Security Strategy. Now, this strategy document comes out every year. It shows how the U.S. government sees the world and how it will approach looming threats. In the last few years, those threats have mostly focused on Russia and China. While this time, some of the harshest language is used to describe Europe. The document says European countries are on the decline, losing their national identities and self-confidence. It explains how governments have apparently ceded their sovereignty to the European Union and to so-called open border policies that will make Europe unrecognizable in 20 years or less. Critics say this all sounds like the Great Replacement theory, which white nationalists use to say white populations are being replaced by immigrants from majority non-white nations. But the White House says it's not about race. It says it's about mass migration straining resources, increasing violence, and more. Meanwhile, the document avoids referring to Russia as a threat. It accuses America's NATO allies of pushing for unrealistic goals in the war in Ukraine. And it calls for the U.S. to reestablish strategic stability with Russia. When it comes to China, it was almost exclusively talked about in terms of the economic relationship with the U.S. And overall, the document argues the U.S. should scale back its commitments around the world and focus its efforts on securing the Western Hemisphere. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth spoke about this strategy at the annual Reagan National Defense Forum over the weekend. Hegseth said his department will, quote, not be distracted by democracy building, interventionism, undefined wars, regime change, climate change, woke moralizing, and feckless nation building. He continued saying, quote, out with idealistic utopianism, in with hard-nosed realism. Well, this week could bring extreme weather on both sides of the country. The Pacific Northwest is expected to get heavy rainfall, like as much as 7 inches of rain in some areas of western Oregon and Washington state. The rain has already started, though the worst of it is expected later this week. Flood watches are now in effect and landslides are possible. Meanwhile, millions of people across the Midwest and eastern U.S. are getting hit with another round of Arctic cold. Temperatures are below 0 degrees this morning in parts of the Midwest, and forecasters expect people there to see 3 to 5 more inches of new snow. Already, Chicago has received 9 inches of snow more than average for this time of year, and more rounds of fast-moving snowstorms could continue all week. So people who live everywhere from Washington state to Maine are being told to keep their eyes on the latest forecasts. As expected, Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy's vaccine advisors voted to support a major change to America's recommended childhood vaccine schedule. The advisory committee now recommends not giving all babies the hepatitis B shot until they're at least 2 months old, saying newborns would only need one if their mothers tested positive, and everyone else should speak with their doctors. Also, since the Hep B vaccine requires 3 shots over time, the panel recommends babies take a blood test to find out if the first shot gave them enough antibodies before they get a second dose. To be clear, there's no new evidence that's come out showing the vaccine is less safe. The panel just explained that it's not worth any kind of risk since hepatitis B infection rates are low anyway. Though many disease experts say the reason the rates are low is thanks to the vaccine policy. And now major medical groups say the new advice will lead to more infections. They point out how even if a mother tests negative, babies could get it from someone else in the household. About half of people with Hep B don't know they have it, and the disease is 100 times more infectious than HIV. The committee's recommendations have historically guided what vaccines insurers decide to cover and which ones states recommend. At this point, it's not clear if this new policy will actually change those things. Meanwhile, other guidance could soon change too. On Friday, President Trump has ordered his top health officials to review all childhood vaccine recommendations. So stay tuned. The Trump administration changed which days Americans can visit national parks for free. The new list of free admission days came out for 2026, and it shows two of the most prominent civil rights holidays, Martin Luther King Jr. Day and Juneteenth, were both removed. But the day that is both President Trump's birthday and Flag Day was added. A spokesperson for the National Parks Conservation Association says she's particularly worried about what the change means for MLK Day, since it's become a popular day of service for community groups that perform volunteer projects at parks. And it's not clear how many will continue if it ends up being costly. So far, no comment from the National Park Service. By the way, the National Park Service is making other changes next year too, including charging higher admission fees for international visitors. We have more news for you still ahead. But first, let's take a quick break to talk about our sponsor. This time of year, my skin always needs a little extra care. Think cooler weather, travel, the rush of the holidays. But I've kept my skin looking and feeling great thanks to OneSkin. You know how much I love their face moisturizer already, and I've recently added their new peptide lip mask to my nightly routine, and I love it. And it's just been so great to have this powerful combination of skincare ready to go on my bathroom counter every day. It's one less thing I have to think about while it's delivering the skincare I need now and giving me long-term benefits. Because remember, at the core of OneSkin is their OS1 peptide, proven to target the key signs of aging, and the results have now been validated in 5 different clinical studies. OneSkin also just launched their limited edition holiday sets, including the Nightly Rewind gift set, featuring their best-selling face moisturizer, that new peptide lip mask I talked about, and a sculpting gua sha tool. Each element is designed to work together overnight, helping renew skin at the cellular level for a stronger, smoother, and more youthful-looking complexion. For a limited time, you can try OneSkin for 15% off using the code NEWSWORTHY at oneskin.co/newsworthy. Again, try OneSkin for 15% off using the code NEWSWORTHY at oneskin.co/newsworthy. After your purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them, so please support our show and tell them we sent you. Now, back to the news. It was a big weekend for sports fans, starting with college football. First, there were the conference championship games Friday and Saturday. Then yesterday, the College Football Playoff Committee came out with its bracket. My alma mater, Indiana University, earned the number 1 overall seed after beating defending national champion Ohio State in the Big Ten Championship. Ohio State ended the season with the second best record. Georgia and Texas Tech rounded out the top 4. They now all get a week off, but for other teams, bowl season kicks off next weekend. In racing, Lando Norris won his first ever Formula One World Championship. He actually did it by coming in 3rd in the final race of the year. Yep, even though 2 other drivers beat him, Norris had the highest final point total. Then there was soccer. Inter Miami won its first Major League Soccer championship over the Vancouver Whitecaps. This comes in big part thanks to superstar Lionel Messi, who joined the team a couple of years ago. For Messi, it was the 47th trophy of his career, extending his record as the most decorated player of all time. The 2026 World Cup schedule was released over the weekend. Every team has not been determined because playoffs are still happening, but the announcement set off a scramble for millions of fans to book flights, secure tickets, and find places to stay across the U.S., Mexico, and Canada. 48 countries will compete in 12 groups of 4. The U.S. men's national team will play in Group D along with Paraguay, Australia, and whoever wins the UEFA Playoff C. Group D's games will be played either in Los Angeles or Seattle. The groups were revealed during a draw ceremony at the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. that included big names across sports like Tom Brady, Shaquille O'Neal, and Wayne Gretzky. There were also celebrities like Kevin Hart and Heidi Klum, along with President Trump. In fact, before the draw got underway, Trump was awarded the first ever FIFA Peace Prize. So Trump gave a speech talking about how he had ended wars and, quote, saved millions and millions of lives. It was widely expected that Trump would get it since he has a close relationship with FIFA's president and has complained about getting passed over for the Nobel Peace Prize. Remember how last week we told you President Trump pardoned Democratic Congressman Henry Cuellar? Well, now Trump says he regrets it, but not because of anything to do with the bribery case Cuellar and his wife had been facing. Instead, the president is angry because the Texas congressman announced he would run for office again as a Democrat. Trump said it shows a lack of loyalty. It's worth noting Cuellar sits in one of the House Dems' most competitive seats, but Cuellar told Fox News he doesn't vote based on what party he's in anyway, just what he believes is right for the country. Netflix is buying a historic piece of Hollywood. The streaming giant won a contentious bidding war to buy Warner Brothers movie and television studios, HBO, and HBO Max. That means Netflix could soon own everything from Batman to Harry Potter to Friends to Game of Thrones, and a studio that dates back more than a century to the silent film era. Warner's cable channels like CNN, TNT, and HGTV are not included in this deal. Still, it's worth $82.7 billion. Netflix and Warner Brothers say their boards separately and unanimously approved the buyout. But regulators also need to sign off, and that could be an uphill battle. Industry groups and antitrust experts are against this deal, saying it threatens competition for creative talent in Hollywood. President Trump also said it could be a problem because the company would have a huge market share. Still, he did not rule it out and said he already had a good meeting with Netflix's co-CEO, Ted Sarandos. The streaming giant says it should be able to finalize the deal in the next year or two. Well, that's it for the main news, so now it's time for Money Monday, when we talk about one interesting money-related news story. But first, a quick thanks to our sponsor. I might not be able to control when my kiddo gets up too early in the morning, but the one thing I can control is how comfortable and cozy I feel when I get into bed and the quality of sleep I get. And for me, that includes wearing Skims pajamas. They're the best. I really feel like I sleep better when I feel good in the fabrics that I'm wearing. Plus, with the cute holiday patterns available right now, I feel more intentional and put together walking downstairs in my cute holiday PJs to our decorations already filling the living room. And this latest set from Skims I got, the Skims Sleep Set, is the softest pair of pajamas I have ever owned. It's such a good feeling to be in my new Skims Sleep Set around the house, cuddled up with a cup of hot tea or even hot cocoa in the evenings. And it'll be so fun to have these as we wake up for the holidays later this month. You'll find me in these PJs all season long. Shop my favorite pajamas at skims.com. And after you place your order, be sure to let them know we sent you. Select podcast in the survey and be sure to select our show in the drop-down menu that follows. And if you're looking for the perfect gifts for everyone on your list, the Skims Holiday Shop is now open at skims.com. Now, back to Money Monday. So we are talking about a trend happening with young adults, and it's called financial flexing. Essentially, it means they're going broke in an effort to look rich. A new nationwide study from Credit One Bank found more than half of Gen Z admit to lying or exaggerating about their financial success online. A lot of this goes back to the influencer economy, since many popular influencers make their living showing off luxuries that aren't realistic on an everyday salary, especially for young people just starting in the workforce. It's not just social media that's to blame, though. The study also found that nearly 40% of people admitted going into debt or damaging their credit score to impress someone on a date. Some financial therapists say people also try to impress their friends by overspending, especially on things like weddings and parties. So they tend to remind their clients what you see is usually the best of someone's life without the debt or the overdraft fees. Thank you so much for joining us today. We'll be back with even more news to know tomorrow. For now, have a great day.